Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we have to take a look today at, it's a little bit late here, but we're talking about the Evander Kane signing with the Edmonton Oilers. Is this the end of the drama, the saga for Evander Kane in the NHL? And we're going to go over that today. His new signing, where does he fit? Is it a good fit? What's the long-term ramifications? We're going to go over all of that today. What is the long-term intentions? So, this early on, it seemed like he was going to go to the Oilers. And that's kind of how it looked. There was a report back at the end of 2021 that Evander Kane had signed with the Oilers, and then all of a sudden that stuff started getting reeled back, and I was ready to make a video back right after Christmas. Evander Kane has signed with the Oilers, and then all of a sudden the border stuff came up, how he illegally crossed the border, and he didn't get tested, and this and that, and everything else under the moon that happened to Evander Kane. Now we're starting to get some more information in terms of, what happened with that, the investigation that proceeded. Obviously that was the biggest thing. When Evander Kane wanted to sign, he wanted to have all of this set. He wanted to know his stance from the NHL. Was he going to get suspended? What was going to happen? Inevitably, it doesn't look like he's obviously avoided suspension in terms of he's playing with the Oilers. He has already played his first 2 games with Edmonton. He's already got a goal. He got a goal in his first game, playing alongside Connor McDavid. So things are going pretty well for him. But everybody has been very adamant. I think most people for that matter, especially in the hockey community in the NHL, have been pretty in the sense of not liking Evander Kane, very against him, and I'm going to be honest here, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there is unfortunately, there is a lot of information out there that it is allegations against him, and the problem is because he doesn't fit what you want a hockey player to be, or what you think a player should do, or this or that, at the end of the day, there is nothing that the NHL can do at this point to stop him from signing a contract. So at the end of the day, you really can't blame the Oilers or anybody else that wanted him, because in terms of the law, he didn't break any laws, and that's kind of the thing. Now there's moral issues aside, unfortunately or fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what side of the fence you were on, if you're really rooting against Evander Kane, I hate to break it to you, Evander Kane here over the next 3 or 4 months with Edmonton, this is huge for him, because obviously and we've made videos about this already, he filed for bankruptcy, has an estranged situation with his wife, that he cheated, that he abandoned his child. Those are all allegations from his ex-wife. So to say that is the truth and that is it is not really fair to Evander Kane. I could see why people could gravitate toward that because of his past, because of his indiscretions with other organizations, and that unfortunately is going to be part of it. And I know Evander Kane doesn't like that, but there's reason to believe that that's there. And you know what? Again, I have my own thoughts on that. And truthfully, it doesn't really matter, because there is a team out there, whether you think it's just they're desperate enough to take him, or, to be honest, he's a really damn good hockey player. I mean, this is a guy that, if you told me for the rest of this season he could put up 20-plus goals, I wouldn't bat an eye. And we've already seen he's already scored a goal. And he's going to be playing with Connor McDavid, or, at the very worst, oh no, he's going to play with Leon Draisaitl on the second line. How awful, right? And you look at who he could be playing with, right? He's either going to be playing with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman, or Leon Draisaitl and Jesse Puljujarvi. Is there really a loss there for Evander Kane? I see the incentive for him to go to the Oilers, a perfect fit for him. It's a 1-year deal. In terms of the Oilers side of things, this is a great deal by Ken Holland, because at the end of the day, we've seen, truthfully, he has had indiscretions with all of his organizations. There was the Winnipeg Jets situation. He came to practice late, or came to the game late, and was in a tracksuit and not in a full tux, like a classic player would. And Bufflin and the team ended up throwing his jumper into the shower, which I thought was, a little bit of a savage move there. But if you guys know Dustin Bufflin, that's not the most shocking thing. And, at the time, everybody kind of made Bufflin out to be the bad guy. But again, with your lens, if you already don't like Evander Kane, you're going to side with the fact that Evander Kane is a bad person because, this is the information that someone said, and that's it. And it's kind of proving the point that you want to get across, but that may not necessarily be the case. And you know what? I'd like to see Evander Kane, kind of get things going here, because I want him to shut everybody up about his situation with his parental situation, his bankruptcy situation. I want him to shut everybody up and just go out there and be the hockey player that he is. And whether people agree with his mindset and his attitude, you know what? At the end of the day, it's gotten him to where he's gotten in the NHL. Whether he's had his bankruptcy and his divorce and stuff like that. But let's be honest, in terms of people in the world, Evander Kane is still an extremely successful person. And very easily can turn around everything that's gone wrong for him just by playing hockey and making money. And that's why it's very important here that he does have a successful tenure and kind of stays, not to say under the radar, because then he's not going to get that big ticket contract this summer, and that's what I'm leading to here. He's got to go out there and score a ton of goals, and he's going to do that. And teams know that after his time off, he's been training, he's been getting ready. He wants that big ticket contract this summer. So the Oilers' $2 million here for the rest of the season is going to be chump change, hopefully, to what Evander Kane can get this summer from another team. And that's really what this comes down to. Evander Kane he has motives here to do well the rest of this season and kind of stay under the radar and low key, because he wants the big ticket contract. And I think that's going to be offered to him if he produces at the level we know he can and the level that he has throughout pretty much his entire career. And obviously he's had his indiscretions off the ice, and that's something that has to be accounted for. But you know damn well somebody's going to pay him the money because he scores goals. There's, as much as you don't like what he thinks or his beliefs, he scores goals. He does the hockey thing. He does it extremely well, and he's going to get well compensated for it because he can produce. And there was a lot of talk about his situation, and that's where in his introductory press conference in Edmonton, he had some very interesting quotes. So we have to go over that here. So this was the first one in Evander Kane on his thoughts on TSN, which is the sports network with, who are those? TSN. They've got a bunch of guys on there. It's a Canadian broadcast. They had a lot of things to say about Evander Kane. And this was what Kane had to kind of fight that back. He said, "Some of the things I've been accused of are horrific. Just reading them, I'm disgusted." So pretty interesting to see that. And then this was another one on TSN. A lot of fans' opinions is just what the media says. So he's basically saying, the fans are sheep. They're just going along with what the narrative that the TSN and these other places are putting out to them and pumping to them, so they're going to agree with that, which there is some reason to believe that that's not entirely false. And this was his thoughts on Jeff O'Neill, also known as O-Dog, saying he needs to be a better father, which that's kind of digging deep there. I have to be honest, I don't agree with that. I have my thoughts on Jeff O'Neill. I don't hate him or love him, but I thought that was a little bit of, that was too far. And he said, "I wish Jeff O'Neill was in the NHL right now." Basically meaning he wishes he could kick his ass, right, to fight him. So I thought that was kind of funny. But again, that's just, it's all stuff to lead into that, it's kind of creating this mentality for Evander Kane. It's just pushing him. It's pushing him forward by throwing all this stuff at him. Do you want to give him more fire to do well this year? Like, he's just going to want to shut all these people up. I think that's really interesting. So, Evander Kane, these are the details of this signing. So, he signed a 1-year, $2.1 million contract. He will be getting $750K, the prorated salary, a $625K signing bonus included with a full no movement clause, so he is exempt from the NHL trade deadline this year. He will be in Edmonton up until July of this year. And this is from Puck Report NHL on Instagram. They're a great source. This is what they said. The deal pays the former Sharks winger a $750K prorated salary. And like I said, the $625K signing bonus for a grand total cash payout of $970K. So let all the Evander Kane haters out there soak that into themselves a little bit. Since the contract is signed after the start of the season, the cap hit is boosted to cover for the missed time. The contract also includes, like I said, a full NMC, which is a no-move clause, and that is for the Edmonton Oilers. So, pretty exciting stuff here for Evander Kane, and that's the first thing going on in Edmonton. So, we are already 11 minutes into the video. We got the Evander Kane stuff out. Now we have to talk about the rest of the stuff in Edmonton. So, they've got Evander Kane brought in. Perfect. Now, I don't think the Oilers are necessarily done yet. The biggest need is probably in between the pipes. So, they've addressed trying to add some scoring depth with Evander Kane. Now, they seem to be looking at plenty of options in between the pipes behind Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen. So, this is from Pierre LeBrun, a big hockey insider. The Edmonton Oilers have kicked tires on Blue Jackets goaltender Joonas Korpisalo. Korpisalo has definitely become the 1B option up in Columbus, as Elvis Merzlikins got that big contract extension in 2021. They made it quite clear from that point that moving forward, it was going to be Big Elvis's net moving forward, which inevitably means Joonas Korpisalo, who will be an unrestricted free agent this summer, probably going to be a rental somewhere, and this could be a fairly cheap option here for the Oilers. As a guy that's kind of been under the radar, he's been a lot quieter this season, as like I said, Merzlikins has definitely taken the net in Columbus. We're seeing less starts for Corpy, as well as a little bit of a down season for him, and that could be just perfect for the Oilers, who are looking to, again, it's not guaranteed that they're going to make the playoffs this year. So they may not be in on the Marc-Andre Fleury front in terms of giving up a first-round pick necessarily, but for a couple of mid-round draft picks and a mid prospect, you could get a guy like Joonas Korpisalo. Now, this is another one here from Elliot Friedman, which I think is interesting. Because of the team that's associated with this player, the Oilers have looked at Semyon Varlamov, Ville Husso, Vitek Vanacek, and Alexander Georgiev. So what's interesting, a lot of these teams are maybe not playoff teams like the Islanders, but they're in the conversation. So Semyon Varlamov is a great example of the Islanders who, again, everybody forgets the Islanders situation. They are a dozen games back of most teams in the Metropolitan Division, and they're only 14 points back. Obviously, yes, 14 points back. That is substantial, but and if you look at their win percentage throughout or their point percentage compared to other teams, they are right in the conversation with the Detroit Red Wings, who are just outside the playoff picture. So when the Islanders make up those 10 to 12 games, they could potentially, if they win most of those games, again, there is an if to that conversation, but they could be right up there with the Penguins and the Red Wings and the Bruins for one of those wild card spots in the Eastern Conference. So the fact that the Islanders will be willing to trade a guy like Varlamov, again, Varlamov is having a terrible season right now for the Islanders. So again, kind of like Korpisalo, he's shown flashes of being a great goaltender, yet he's having a down season this year, kind of the 1B option for the Islanders as well, as Ilya Sorokin has taken that role. And you look at some of these other goalies, Ville Husso has actually had a pretty good year. He's been really awful for the Blues for the past 2 years. He seems to be turning things around, gaining a little bit of value this year for the Blues organization as a good backup. Vitek Vanacek in Washington. They could, the thing with the Capitals is they have goalie options, which makes things interesting because you look behind, obviously Ilya Samsonov is the guy, but even the Capitals may be looking to upgrade. So if they bring in a Marc-Andre Fleury, they would probably like to trade out a Vitek Vanacek so he doesn't have to clear waivers. And that's something that probably comes into the conversation. But behind Vitek Vanacek, who is the backup, the Capitals have Phoenix Copley, Zachary Fucale in the American Hockey League down in Hershey, who you could argue is, Phoenix Copley in particular has been very good here over the past 2 to 3 months, as well as Fucale in the NHL. He has been pretty good in his 5 or 6 starts. So, there is reason to believe one of those two guys could be the backup, right? So, there is some intrigue there for Vitek Vanacek. And Georgiev has been in the conversation, but again, unless the Rangers went out and got a Marc-Andre Fleury or a big-name goaltender to take over that backup behind Shesterkin, who has been an incredible goalie, I don't see the Rangers trading out Georgiev and not bringing somebody back in. And I think that's kind of part of the situation with some of these teams is most of those teams I just mentioned are either playoff teams, like the Rangers or the Capitals or the Blues, or teams that are like fringe teams, like the Islanders, where I don't think they'd be ready to trade Varlamov just yet. So I think that's a little bit interesting. And that was from Elliot Friedman. Now we also have some interesting stuff with some other players in Columbus other than Jonas Korpisalo. So this is also from Elliot Friedman. If Edmonton does a deal with Columbus, I'm not convinced Korpisalo is the right move. So he's kind of going back on that. Watch to see if the Oilers also look at Kevin Stenlund. He's in the AHL on a one-way contract. He's a big body who can play. Edmonton needs some beef. So I think that was interesting there from Elliot Friedman. Kevin Stenlund is a guy nobody really talks much about, but he has been a pretty serviceable player in his time in the NHL. And I think that scouts have been watching him pretty often here. Maybe not to the level of a guy like Arturi Lehkonen in Montreal as that really good bottom six forward. But he is the lesser version of an Arturi Lehkonen. If I could give somewhat of a comparable, and I think Kevin Stenlund would be a lot cheaper than Zach Kassian and James Neal have been for the Oilers. So I think most Oilers fans and Ken Howen would be kind of all in on that. And that's kind of it for the Edmonton Oilers. So just to wrap up, a couple of goalie options for the Oilers to look at here over the next couple of weeks. We're starting to see some names thrown around. Kevin Stenlund, of all names to throw around. Kevin Stenlund seems to be the next potential option for the Oilers to add some beef to the bottom six. So we'll see how that goes. As well as Evander Kane signing. All the controversy and drama around that I think is just great. He seems to be soaking it in, and hopefully he's using that toward power and a little bit of motivation here down the stretch with the Edmonton Oilers, and maybe he gets them back in the playoff race, because we know if the Oilers don't make the playoffs this season, well, truthfully, we know that's not really an option. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time. Go Oilers.